Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel, Cap Social Network, also known as Capri Social Network. So, and today I wanted to talk about another taboo subject, and this is pertaining to New Age racism. On that note, this is one of the main topics that I consider a taboo topic due to the simple fact that we still have to deal with racism until this day, which is very unfortunate all over the US. As a matter of fact, all over the globe, all over the world. However, it's not as severe as it was back in the days when a lot of Black American people used to have to deal with having to sit at the very back of the bus. If not that, usually had you used to have to drink from separate water fountains when not cases of that nature used to have to deal with having police brutalize them and use excessive force upon them to the extent where they would sick dogs on us, on our ancestors. That is, thank goodness I didn't have to deal with those kind of incidents. But unlike back then, back during the civil rights era and the slavery era, which was even worse, having to deal with so many years of abuse from our slave masters, from also having to deal with our women, a lot of our women being raped, our Black American women, and having to deal with even us Black American men, our ancestors, that is, being raped by the slave masters as well. On top of that, and even worse, kids being forced to have incest with their mothers. One of the main reasons why the MF word is still prevalent to this day, if you catch my drift. Also, unlike back then, back in those days, how the racism was much more direct, now it comes in the form of dealing with being denied houses, being denied and not being approved for a house if you're, for instance, a Black American that happened to go to an elite college and happened to graduate college with a very high GPA and a whole lot of honors as well, only to graduate college and be able to prove to others how your college education really did pay off by applying to move in a $200,000 or in some cases above house after doing the application, getting a chance to talk to the real estate agent, which in most cases use a white real estate agent, a realtor, and everything going just fine as far as the conversation. The realtor happened to be very courteous, very professional. Only for them a day or so right after you were to do the meetup, may do the tour, happen to have done the tour of the house, the actual in-person tour of the house, only for that realtor, and you could be on top of that a person with an A1 credit score as well, only for that realtor to deny you the house and find some kind of excuse, invalid in most cases, of why you were denied that house. It's not because of the excuse they made up, it's due to the simple fact that they low key may not want any African Americans or any other minorities to stay in that neighborhood, which in some cases may be a neighborhood with literally nothing but all white residents. One reason why is due to how they feel like the property value will go down. With the more minorities, they'll usually move into that neighborhood, qualify to be able to reside in that neighborhood. It now, on the flip side of that, some minorities are usually able to reside in neighborhoods of that nature, very affluent and mostly white neighborhoods, but they have to deal with also having a much more higher interest rate whenever they may get approved for home loans as opposed to their white counterparts who may apply for the same kinds of home owners or mortgage loans, how they may get charged an interest rate at a way less rate than any or their minority counterparts. That's a perfect example of how racism exists, but it's just indirect. And you call it, where what I call it is new age racism. It also comes in the form of your local police officers, local politicians, state politicians, your firefighters, your school teachers, your defense attorneys, your who else? Your judges, your defense lawyers. Well, I already said defense attorneys. Let me rephrase that. Your prosecutors. Last but not least, your school teachers. Just to name a few examples, I could go on that because don't let me get started on having to deal with racist doctors and nurses as well, which are all over the U.S. at a whole lot of hospitals. Due to the simple fact that it may be a case where a black patient may be in the ER of the hospital, because I have actually experienced this myself. This is part of one of my personal experiences when I was working at a hospital in my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama. For some of you Birmingham residents, you know exactly which hospital I'm referring to. It was a case where a few years ago, because the time I was working there as a custodian, it happened to be this one African American female who happened to be in her 50s, and she had been on her sick bed, so to speak, in a emergency part of the hospital. It just so happened as I had came time for me to be able to have the opportunity to clean up her room. She was complaining to me about how all the employees, all the nurses, from the nurses to the doctors to the PCTs that were in the whole ER area, kept on walking past her like she wasn't even in that room at all. And I felt very badly for her. I couldn't help but to. It made almost tears want to come down my eyes. The majority of them, which is no surprise, happen to be Caucasian employees. That's another prime example of how new age racism is prevalent now. Once again, white people aren't going as far as banning us from their restaurants, so to speak, or brutalizing us like they did back in the 1950s and before by having dogs, sicking dogs on us or spraying us with water hoses. Instead, they're going to other and much more indirect levels of racism nowadays. Once again, which I call or consider as new age racism. With that being said, I want to talk about the police officers and former police officers, that is, both Amber Guyver and Derek Chauvin, and show you some screenshots of another example of how new age racism exists nowadays. Bear with me, folks. Now, this is pertaining to Amber Guyver, who some of you remember pretty well as the Dallas police officer who killed Botham John, or Gene, however you would pronounce his last name, who is unfortunately not with us anymore, in his apartment. And this happened Okay, this article is pretty old. This article is from October 3rd, 2019. So the incident happened around 2018, somewhere around that year. Anyway, she got sentenced, to make a long story short, prison time, but only 10 years. And I find that so ironic and unfortunate at the same time, how she got sentenced only 10 years on behalf of something that she brought upon herself, because she claimed when she broke into his apartment, she felt like he was a burglar and feared for her life because of that, which was a bunch of BS to start with. And th- to make matters even worse, once the verdict reached a decision on whether she should face prison time or not, one of his family members happened to hug this lady, which is a perfect example of how, in our eyesight, white people can do no wrong. We put white people on such a pedestal, us as Black Americans, which is still so sad to me and crazy at the same time. But this article is also saying jurors on Tuesday. By the way, folks, this article is from October 2019, which is was 4 years ago. Jurors on Tuesday have found Guyver 31. She was 31 at the time of this article, and during her trial and sentencing, guilty of murder for fatally shooting John in his Dallas apartment in 2018. She had faced between 5 and 99 years for the shooting. Personally, I feel like she should have been sentenced to way much more longer than 10 years. I personally feel like she should have been sentenced to upwards of 40 years to life. But due to, like I said, one of his family members, and right here, in this picture right here, this thumbnail, it's her brother. It was her brother hugging Miss Amber Guyver and forgiving her for killing his brother in cold blood. Once again, this is a perfect example, ladies and gentlemen, of how, in our eyesight, white Americans are so perfect. We look at white Americans, might as well say, as God, as superior as God, and put them on such a pedestal. Even in this year, 2023, we still look at white people as so innocent, so perfect, so much more superior than us. Although a lot of us hate to say it, it's the sad truth. So I'm going to exit out of here and show you a screenshot pertaining to Mr. Derek Chauvin. Now, a lot of you are very familiar with Mr. Derek Chauvin from on behalf of the murder from 3 years ago, the police officer who went viral for killing George Floyd by having a knee on one of his necks, right on camera, which was recorded courtesy of a cell phone. Anyway, this article, courtesy of Wikipedia, is saying in early 2021, Chauvin was put on trial for unintentional second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter of Floyd before a jury in the Minnesota 4th Judicial District Court. On April 20th, he was convicted on all of the charges. On June 25th, he was sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison, which is a bunch of BS. He should have been sentenced he should receive the same sentence, like I was just stating, on behalf of Miss Amber Guyver, of 40 years at the minimum to life in prison, because he killed another person cold blooded and on camera. Unlike when Amber Guyver shot and killed Botham Jean, it wasn't on camera, but was somehow able to get record. I guess it was recorded on surveillance, is what I'm assuming. If it wasn't, even if it wasn't recorded by cell phone, but this here incident with this piece of S, if you catch my drift, HIT killed a man right on candid camera, uh, due to somebody filming it with a cell phone with his knee on a person's neck. I mean, how inhumane and dirty can you get? Anyway, on June 25th, and this is from June 25th of 2021, folks, he was sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison with credit given for 199 days time served with the possibility of supervised release after 15 years, which is some more BS because he may end up doing less than 15 years of his already 2-year sentence. 2/3 of his sentence, the what I mean by 2 years is that's how many years he's been doing so far since he got sentenced during the year 2021. After 15 years, 2/3 of his sentence contingent on factors such as good behavior. And this also brings to mind how, as the age goes, with the lighter the skin color, the lighter the sentence. And also, it's another perfect example of how racism still exists. Indirect and new age racism, that is. Because I guarantee you, if he was either himself or Amber Guyver were of Black American descent, it's no way they would do these light sentences that they ended up receiving due to them being white American, and due to, when it all comes down to it, due to how white supremacy still exists in society and white privilege. I'm just calling a spade, folks, whether we want to deny it or not. And it always will still exist, even if the majority white in the next decade or so. It's been rumored that white Americans will end up being a minority, which I still kind of find hard to believe. White privilege will still exist, even if they do end up becoming the minority within the next decade or two. Anyway, let me stop sharing this. And this is on behalf of critical race theory, which is being restricted from being. Hold on, hold on. Let me share my screen again to show something else that I wanted to talk about that I also consider as a taboo topic. Now, critical race theory is an interdisciplinary academic field devoted to analyzing how social and political laws and media shape and are shaped by social conceptions of race and ethnicity. CRT also considers racism to be systemic in various laws and rules, and not only based on individuals' prejudices. The word critical in the name is an academic reference to critical thinking, critical theory, and scholarly criticism, rather than criticizing or blaming individuals. CRT, aka critical race theory, is also used in sociology to explain social, political, and legal structures and power distribution, such whereas, excuse me, folks, through a quote unquote lens focusing on the concept of race and experiences of racism. In a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, and I also wanted to show you this as well, a map on behalf of the states all over the US that don't want, where they don't want critical race theory to be taught in schools. And as you see right here, this is my state right here of Alabama, which is known to have a racist history that still is prevalent in my state of Alabama. As a matter of fact, it's been said throughout the years for a very long time that both Alabama and, as you see right here, Mississippi are some of the most racist states throughout the whole U.S. Although racism is also becoming much more prevalent in the North and the Midwest, because if you look at, if you take into account the incident that happened when between George Floyd and Derek Chauvin, that happened in the Midwest, in the Midwestern state, in the state of Minnesota. So it's not just, folks, the deep South where racism is the most prevalent. It's becoming more, like I was just stated, folks. It's becoming even more prevalent up north and in the Midwest. Anyway, all these states, all these red states you see, Texas, that's another southern state. This right here would be Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee. I believe one of the Virginia states. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, this right here, all the red states are states with laws restricting education on race in classrooms or state agencies. Now let me stop sharing that. And when it all comes down to it, that's because the majority of teachers in the U.S. schools, as we speak, are of Caucasian descent. And so many of it, when it all boils down to it, don't want to be reminded of their racist past, nor their inbred racism that still exists. I guarantee, because I guarantee you the majority of them, the white teachers that are usually qualified to teach in these schools, are racist. They don't stay anywhere in their neighborhoods. Most of them don't stay by even one minority, close to proximity within a 5-mile radius of even one minority. These same white teachers who may pretend to like minority students may try to fit in by using the latest lingo, urban lingo, or whatnot. May even try to go as far as partaking in some of the latest TikTok and other social media trends when some of the minority students, when they're not around those kids teaching those same minority kids, I guarantee you that saying all kinds of racial using all kinds of racial slurs about those same students who they claim to like so much and try to fit in with, including during all teacher conferences that that have nothing but all teachers, all teachers, principals, just all faculty members. I guarantee you, though, anytime when it's meetings or conferences, when teachers, where all teachers have to meet with each other, you won't believe how many racial slurs they may use while they're used around each other during all teacher conferences and faculty conferences. I'm just saying that's another example of how racism still exists. It's just indirect now. Anyway, I want to also share the screen and give you another example. And this here, ladies and gentlemen, is on behalf of a black student. I'm going to play the video, as a matter of fact, who was suspended from school on behalf of his hairstyle.
Being followed. How you want to play this?
I'm gonna go introduce myself.
Be nice.
Why wouldn't I be nice?
He's not getting a proper education. He's not getting a proper instruction.
Jerisha George's 17-year-old son, Daryl, was suspended a second time after returning to class at his Mont Belvieu, Texas school in mid-September. She says the school suspended Daryl because his lock hairstyle violated the district dress code.
I'd like to go back to class and do what I need to do to get my education.
George says Daryl was suspended for the first time in the same week that the state's Crown Act went into effect. The law prohibits discrimination based on hair texture or style, such as locks and braids.
It is a part of who we are. I want them to change their policies. I want them to stop being discriminatory against Black and brown kids. Not just mine, but any other Black and brown kid.
The dress code for the Barbers Hill Independent School District states that, quote, male students' hair will not extend at any time below the eyebrows or below the earlobes. A district spokesperson told CNN affiliate KTRK that the hair length rule doesn't conflict with the Crown Act. When reached by CNN, David Bloom, the district's director of communications, said the district was, quote, unable to comment. The family's lawyer said Daryl and his mother have been asked to meet with school officials. George told CNN she's considering legal action.
I'm trying to figure out how he's getting violated when y'all never seen his hair let down. How do y'all know it's below his eyebrows?
Being followed.
And I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, that if he happened to be a white student, say for instance, when a spiky punk rock hairstyle that looked just like the fit the description of a heavy metal rock and roll singer, that same white student, whether it may have been either boy, white girl, will still be allowed to attend school without facing any kind of consequences. This is also another perfect example, ladies and gentlemen, of how new age racism is more prevalent and will remain more prevalent than ever now. Indirect racism, you could also call it as well. So let me show some other clips, all courtesy of TikTok pertaining to this topic as well. And I know the video is a tad bit longer than some of my other videos, but I felt like I had to address this topic, which still remains a taboo topic, even amongst African Americans. We still refuse to that. We still refuse to admit that racism still is prevalent until this day. Us same African Americans who allow our kids to get enrolled in schools where some of our kids are able to interact with kids of other races and kids who may happen to hit it off with some of them, although there's some of these kids that are just as racist as the parents and the grandparents, even great grandparents nowadays. Anyway, we think everything is all Gucci just because our kids may get the chance to be enrolled at schools with other races and groups of kids. And in most cases, kids they stay nowhere near the hood, so to speak, nowhere near minority kids. If they do, they may stay around a few Asian kids, Middle Eastern kids, East Indian kids, and that's due because of the simple fact that those same minority kids of those ethnic backgrounds usually have parents that may be either doctors or nurses. Only under those circumstances in most cases. Anyway, let me show these TikTok clips pertaining to this taboo topic as well.
them in your daily life?
Holy shit, yeah.
Do you do?
Yeah.
I don't.
Congratulations! You've unlocked white privilege! You should be like Neo in the Matrix. You can now see the code and understand your white privilege and how it benefits you. For example, this would never happen to you. You run no risk of being a real estate agent, showing a home to other black people, and having the police called and putting you in handcuffs because you're suspected of being burglars. Real estate agent. He accessed the lockbox the way that a real estate agent can. He's showing the home to potential buyers. And my favorite part, not being suspicious, they waved to neighbors doing Sunday things, the guy mowing his lawn, the family next door hosting an outdoor gathering. And yet, someone called 911 because black people in a house are burglars. But hey, this guy doesn't see racism and he should know.
My daughter dates a black man in New York City.
Well, that definitely beats, I have black friends.
Known as the era of Reconstruction in the United States. It was a time after the Civil War where race relations were healing in the United States. One area where we find this is in unions. There was a group called the Knights of Labor. And this group was a union that wanted to include white people and black people. And it was hugely successful because the more people they had, the more power the union had. Well, employers soon caught on to this, and they decided to give white people slightly better benefits than black people if they left the unions. This created a massive racist wedge between white people and black people, and it continues to today. In as late as 2017, the Nissan auto plant in Mississippi used the same racist tactics to drive that wedge. And you can read all about it in Heather McGhee's book, The Sum of Us.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you first and foremost like the video, you share it, you comment on it, let me know about how you feel about this taboo topic. Last but not least, subscribe to the channel. For all my brand new followers, make sure when you choose to subscribe to the channel, you choose to be notified of no upcoming content, not any personalized upcoming content or videos, but to be notified of every single last one of my upcoming videos that I plan on dropping. Anyway, until next time, you guys have a good and blessed day.